Hello everyone, welcome to SwitchUp, and in today's video we're going to look at the 10 games that got the highest score on the channel in this previous month, that month of course being July 2020. In terms of the releases we got last month, it was quite an interesting one. To be fair, we had a mixture of ports, interesting indie games and a first party release from Nintendo themselves. Links to all 10 of these reviews will be in that top pinned comment below, so if you haven't seen them already or are interested in any of the games mentioned, then perhaps go and give them a watch. So what made the cuts and what got the highest score for the month? Well, let's find out. Coming in at 10th place for the month then we had Vigor Founders Pack. Now Vigor is a military shooter set in a post-war Norway and sees you having to create a shelter and then go out and scavenge for pieces to try and improve your equipment as well as your workbench. You will be making forays into the wilderness to try and grab that all-important loot, and Mark found the core gameplay to be incredibly tense and enjoyable. He also enjoyed the shelter building that comes with it. He liked the inclusion of gyro controls, albeit they were not perfect, nor were the textures or unfortunately the frame rate, which fluctuated quite wildly. All in all, this Founders Pack received a SwitchUp score of 65%. Coming in at 9th place for the month then was Story of Seasons Friends of Mineral Town. Now the original version of this game, known as Harvest Moon Friends of Mineral Town, was on the Game Boy Advance and was one of my favourite games of all time, and I loved returning to it in its remade form. Whilst games such as Stardew Valley have obviously taken the basic premise of this game and expanded upon it, for me I love the simplicity of this one even to this day. What I wasn't so keen on is the new art form, which uses 3D character models as opposed to the pixel art of the first game, and in my opinion in some ways it almost dates the game more than that original version's art did. The price was also very expensive, albeit if you're like me you'll most certainly get your money's worth from it, and it's one of those rare examples where the score you give a game doesn't reflect how much you enjoyed it, but you do have to take certain factors into account. All in all though, it got a SwitchUp score of 78%. In 8th place then we had Carrion Full Body. Now Carrion is a game that came out about 10 years ago now I think, on the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, but this, as I said, is the full body edition and does include some extras on that version. It's a truly bizarre game in some respects, almost part visual novel, part puzzle game, but its blend of fantastic writing, very good puzzle mechanics, and even a multiplayer mode as well, mean that it's most certainly worth playing even to this day. Perhaps the visuals won't catch the eye these days, and it is very expensive, bearing in mind of course it's based on a game that was out on the Xbox 360 as I said, but if you can find it for a cheaper price then it's still definitely worth playing, and it got a SwitchUp score of 78%. And next for the month then we had Rogue Company, another team-based shooter, and as with Vigor, a Founders Pack with a free-to-play model being released at a later date. This comes with a few different game modes, standard fare in terms of what you would expect from this sort of game, things like capture the flag or a variation of that, but what's interesting is you build your rogue, your character, using a number of perks, and then these perks will grant you an ability, and having a team of people, each with their own perk, means that you can set up some very interesting games. The team-based gameplay is a lot of fun, the gyro aiming works very well, plus it includes crossplay which is really good. There were some bugs and a few weaker bits in terms of the sound, but all in all, even if you're not waiting for that free-to-play model and want to get it now, even the base price is a fair one at around £13 odd. Rogue Company got a SwitchUp score of 79%. And next for the month, this game just missed out on being included in last month's video. This is The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 3. Now, one of our writers and good friend of the channel, Jace Glover, reviewed this one for us and felt absolutely head over heels for this game, having never played any of the other games in the series before. And as I can see from his profile on my friends list on the Switch, he's put well over 150 hours into it now. He absolutely loved the battling system, finding it incredibly strategic and rewarding, and was bowled over by the sheer amount of content that the game provides, even for its relatively high price point. You'll still be getting your money's worth if you enjoy JRPGs at all. In terms of the negatives, the prologue is quite slow and the game takes a little while to get going. The colour palette can be a bit bland in places, plus there are some odd choices in terms of the sound, especially the use of voice acting, or not, as the case may be at times. All in all though, a very good game and got a SwitchUp score of 80%. And in 5th place for the month then we had Crysis Remastered. Now when Crysis was announced to be coming to the Switch, that old meme had its day in the sun once more, but as it turned out the Switch could run it pretty well actually. Crysis of course is a first person shooter with a very interesting story and gameplay that almost let you choose exactly how you wanted to proceed in terms of being stealthy or going in all guns blazing. That gameplay has held up incredibly well, even 13 years later, and the story is actually very intriguing, plus the visuals look very decent even to this day. It is quite expensive considering its age, although I'm sure some people will be delighted to pick it up again regardless of that price. Plus Mark, who reviewed it for us, did experience a few crashes along the way, but it got a SwitchUp score of 81%. And in 4th place for the month then was a very interesting game called Carrion. Now this described itself as a reverse horror game where you take on the role of the monster. You break out of a biohazard container at the start of the game and then make your way around a research facility looking to escape, and of course the humans are there at the same time. What I loved most about this game was just how great it felt being this amorphous creature. The fluidity of movement that you felt as you moved along really added to the gameplay, and it also had an interesting mechanic where you would gain new abilities by smashing other biohazard containers. These abilities would then be used to allow yourself further access into the game, and some of them were really quite interesting, and the whole game just reminded me of John Carpenter's The Thing, one of my favourite films of all time. In terms of negatives, it would have been nice for them to have included a map, albeit a lot of people said they didn't feel they needed one, but if it's there and you don't use it, that's fair enough. And also the tentacle mechanic was a bit awkward to use. A fantastic game though, and in total it got a SwitchUp score of 82%. And in 3rd place for the month then we have Paper Mario The Origami King. This is game number 6 in the Paper Mario series, but of course is the first one to come to the Nintendo Switch. This game keeps on the same path as the last few in this series and almost moves away from its RPG origins, being more of an action adventure game these days. It does still include turn-based battles, but they play out very differently with a ring-based system whereby you have a chance to line up all the enemies that you are fighting by moving these rings, allowing you to hit them all at once and do more damage. This new battling system was interesting, but my problem with the series in general at the moment is there is just no point to the battling because you don't earn XP. This means that the battles start to feel like a chore as you go on, which is unfortunate because the humour and the writing in the game is fantastic, plus the aesthetic of that classic Paper Mario look and the new origami villains is just wonderful to see. It includes all of the charm that you would expect from a Nintendo game, and as much as I really did enjoy it, what I would say is perhaps Nintendo needs to really pick a gameplay style that they want to go with these Paper Mario games now, rather than hedging their bets as they seem to be doing. That's just my 2 pence worth though, and overall it got a SwitchUp score of 83%. In 2nd place for the month was a game called CrossCode. This is almost an ARPG / puzzle game, and what's impressive about it is it takes both of these very different genres and manages to get them both right, with excellent combat as well as very complex puzzles. The storyline is interesting and it has a wonderful 16-bit aesthetic, looks very much like some of the classic Super Nintendo games from the day, such as Secret of Mana or Chrono Trigger for that matter. But what let it down slightly was the inconsistent performance, plus some balancing issues in terms of the difficulty. The positives far outweighed the negatives in this one though, and it got a SwitchUp score of 87%. And the number one game for the month then was Neon Abyss. Now this game I reviewed, and it's a roguelite very much in the style of things like Enter the Gungeon or The Binding of Isaac, and for me it's right up there with those top tier roguelites on the Switch. The sense of progression in terms of the weapons that you pick up and how powerful they make you feel, an essential part of roguelites really for my money, was handled fantastically well with this one. They got it pretty much spot on. The runs that you go on feel interesting, and even when you die and have to start again, it never feels like wasted time because of the permanent progression system that's in place, allowing you to get that bit stronger each time. Plus you can tailor the way that the game goes to your liking, to some extent at least, in terms of the branching skill tree that you pick from with those permanent abilities. One thing that did let the game down was that there was occasional stutter on some bosses. It didn't seem to be one boss in particular, it seemed to be more your loadout when you got to a particular boss would cause it. And I will say now, although I didn't experience this at all myself, a few people in the comment section have mentioned that the game crashes. I didn't experience it, so obviously didn't mention it, but as I'm having a second chance to talk about this game, I will say it now. That aside, I've really enjoyed this game. I found it fantastic fun, spent a lot of time with it, and it got the highest SwitchUp score for the month of July, earning in itself 89%. So there you have it, another month of SwitchUp reviews. Did you pick any of these games up, and if so, what did you think of them? What was your favourite game for the month? Please do let us know in the comment section below. A quick thank you to our Patreons as always for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, stay safe, and until next time, happy gaming.